Hey everybody, it's Brian Asbury, and I just wanted to welcome you to today's episode. If you could, like today's episode, hit that subscribe button, and let's continue to grow the developmentally speaking brand.
Today, my guest is former WWE developmental talent. You may remember her as Skylar Moon. The rest of us know her as Buggy Nova. Buggy, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. I find it hard to find people from that era when FCW and NXT and just developmental in general, because a lot of people, once that time period's over, that's not their life anymore. So I've had people reach out and they're like, "What the hell do you want? It's been 20 years."
Aw. Yeah, it's crazy. It definitely feels like a lifetime ago, for sure.
So I'm gonna ask you a question you've probably been asked a dozen times. What made you
Yeah.
want to get into professional wrestling?
So I've always been a fan and grew up watching Hardy Boys, Lita, Trish Stratus, Molly Holly, that type of era. Um, and I had a friend whose sister was a wrestler, Shelly Martinez.
Hmm.
So, in the indie scene, we would go and watch her at AWS, and at that time, I was a little bit older. Maybe it was like after high school. I was getting into like modeling and acting, and I wanted to do something like entertainment wise. And I'd always been in sports growing
Hmm.
up, so um, like martial arts, soccer, volleyball, softball, like everything. It was just like a sporty, like performance type of kid. Um, so after going to the shows and kind of meeting that those people at AWS, Diablo Joe was kind enough to reach out to me in the MySpace era. I slid in those DMs and was like, "Hey, we're kind of looking for this type of character, and your look seems to be very fitting with our faction."
Hmm.
So I was like, hell yeah, when do I start? Super excited because pro wrestling was a mixture of all the things that I loved, performance and dressing up. And it was also really athletic. Um, so at first, I will say I was really resistant into actually becoming a wrestler. I just wanted to do like the sideline stuff, like the ballet stuff, and yelling and slamming out the mat and yelling at little kids and making them cry. Like that's where my heart was really at. And it wasn't until Bart Kapitsky actually talked me into, okay, we'll just try it, get in there and roll around. And because we want you to know what you're doing if you're going, into the ring and having some spots here and there. So once I started actually wrestling, I was actually in the ring doing it. I really fell in love with it really quickly. So I have Bart to thank for that, to blame and to thank for that.
What, what what was your initial reaction to taking that step? Was it what you thought it would be? Was it harder than what you thought it would be?
um, I think it was much harder because it's
Hmm.
very gymnastics. And I was a like sporty tomboy type kid. I wasn't like a gymnastics kid. So learning that skill set is definitely a new world. And I definitely had a newfound appreciation for pro wrestling at the same time because they would tell me to do things like a sunset flip. I was like, I couldn't fathom how to do a sunset flip the very first time. And if you think about it, and I think a lot of new wrestlers, like starting out super green, like we overthink things. And they're
Hmm.
like, don't think, just go, just jump, don't even think about it. And I'm like, where does my head go? Like, and I'm supposed to land like this. So I remember really being like, I have a really bad memory, but that I remember my very first sunset flip. So like simple things like that. Um, Learning how to do gymnastics is what it is. So
Hmm.
I definitely went into it with one idea and came out with a brand new appreciation of all the training and all the work. And you can't just go once in a while. They had classes, I think at least once a week, maybe two or three times a week. Back when I was training with the Ballard brothers, outside, outdoors, AWS, in the parking lot, that type of ring. So Definitely dedicated and challenging, but like up for the challenge at the same time. It was really, really exciting time.
When you started wrestling and training, did you stay in a general area? And how long before you started to like branch out of where you were training at?
Yeah, so I was training at AWS with the Ballard Brothers and sort of branched out. I was always loyal to
Hmm.
them, and it was Ballard Brothers, Van Ayasset, um, mostly those guys. Sometimes I'd pop into Santino Brothers, and like their whole like style of training is like it's so different. It's like going to, I mean, going to like a different school, going to like a different it was just different pace. So I appreciated having some experience in going there and just seeing what other people do. Uh, with Jesse Hernandez at EWF,
Hmm.
I popped in and would train there a couple times, um, but started branching out. How long did that take? I would say maybe a year. I think I was consistently with the Ballard Brothers for about a year, and then kind of maybe popping in elsewhere here and there.
What? So how hard was it to network back then? I mean, this was uh, a lot of people that may be weird,
Yeah.
just a couple of years ago, but like it was. I don't think it was as easy back then as it is now.
Oh, for sure. I think during that time, I was definitely on MySpace and networking. Man, I think I got really lucky because Bart and the Ballard brothers, like the people I was surrounded with, had a lot of connections,
Hmm.
and those were the people that had my back, especially early on, and also promoting me because I'm like 19 at the time. Like I don't know, I'm just some like punk kid who just so happened to like find a wrestling ring and down the street. So I didn't know what I was doing, so I was just having fun and going with the flow and saying yes to opportunities as they came. And but yeah, I was really really lucky in being surrounded by people with decades of
Hmm.
experience and putting me in certain places in the right places and taking me along with them and taking me under their wing too. So networking, MySpace, I don't know, like trying to put people on your top 8 and be like, "Hey," that was, like, the most networking that I knew how to do. Otherwise, being backstage and trying to make
Hmm.
friends, that was really intimidating too, especially, like, that first year or so. And still, I think no matter I mean, in my experience being backstage, if it's around people I don't know, it can be intimidating.
Hmm.
But especially when I was brand new, it's like, whoa, these guys have been around for a while. And the women too, it's like I look up to these people and it's like, I want you to think I'm cool and I want you to think, a certain way. So networking that way, I was pretty, I like to think I was shy, but very, very grateful to the people that I was surrounded with. So I think they really
Hmm.
like helped me get out there as much as I did.
When do you think your name started getting out there and you were getting noticed more?
When did I notice that?
Yeah.
When did I notice? That's a good question. I think I think I noticed it more on like a local level.
Hmm.
I remember I was going to community college at the same time. Uh, what was that? I'm trying to remember my first school. Oh my gosh, Chafee? No, Cal Poly? No, Mount Sac. It was Mount Sac. It was so long ago, sorry. And I've been to like multiple, but anyways, so I was at Mount Sac and someone recognized me in college as like the local like pro wrestling and the pro wrestling's, like, oh, that's cool. So little things like that made me feel good, but otherwise like getting my name out there, I think just like the connections, like Ryan Smiley, I think he's Ryan Katz.
Hmm.
He really helped me do branch out of wrestling. I did A Thousand Ways to Die. So he knew my name through like mutual friends. So I was like, oh, he's hitting me up to do this like A Thousand Ways to Die TV show. So I think that's kind of when I heard like um, my name kind of getting around there
Hmm.
on a local type of level. And maybe like doing the commercials and stuff, like the Sheamus commercial. It's like someone knew of me. Oh, here's what I was gonna say is the women's wrestling scene back then was completely different. So there
Hmm.
was like five of us. So I think in that way, um, our names kind of got thrown around a little bit more so in the mix because there were just so few of us.
When was your goal WWE? When did you start pursuing that?
I think okay, so here's a little dive into my subconscious
Okay.
is that especially back then, it's like WWE was totally out of the question. Like,
Hmm.
no way. Like, that's not real. Like, one in a million. So I was trying to shoot for, I hope this doesn't come off like bad or like negative, but like I was shooting for like TNA Impact because they seemed a little bit more like alternative, like more
Hmm.
my style. And so that to me felt more realistic. Whereas like WWE Diva, I was like, I don't know if I'm like WWE material. You know, I was like out there with my mohawk and like drawing stars on myself and um, kind of just messy, I guess. So that was just like WWE was just like too far out there, like never gonna happen. But I remember seeing like Christina Von Eerie and Reno Scum on TNA, and I was like, yeah, that's probably like where I felt like more accepted or
Hmm.
what I would fit into more. But I had my trainers also uh, on the side. Like I would have real, like, be real with me, dude. Like, be real. How realistic? Like, what's gonna happen? Like, what are the possibilities? And they were like WWE for sure. Like they would tell me off to and they would help keep me inspired, I think is the best word, and to shoot for the stars and beyond because you really never know what's going to happen.
Hmm.
And a lot of it is you're lucky or you're at the right place at the right time or you know somebody. So it's like as long as you keep working hard and you keep showing up and you keep your options open, like nothing is out of the question. So I'm really forever grateful to my trainers for keeping that like fire in me and like,
Hmm.
oh no, don't count anything out, but anything is possible.
How did your WWE developmental deal come about?
Uh, I I did a couple tryouts, like local shows. I showed up to a tryout in Anaheim and one in Vegas, and the Anaheim one went really well. And I'm trying to remember exactly because like just knowing I was going to do this interview, I was like, how did that start? I'm like trying to put the pieces together, and I'm 21 at this time, maybe 21, 22. And so I'd been wrestling for a couple years, and I had done the Sheamus commercial by this time, and so I knew my name was kind of like out there a little bit, or they
Hmm.
like it was somewhere on paper, somewhere in like a computer. I had done this commercial, so it's like cool. I got like my pinky toe in the door, and so to follow up with this tryout. Um, was so surreal in a group of my peers. We're all local wrestlers showing up and performing and sweating and so nervous because it was a physical, you have to have a match. And I was the only female at the Anaheim audition. So AJ Lee actually, bless her heart, came out and wrestled with me so that I had a girl to wrestle with. And I'm like this, like, oh my God, AJ, like, thank you slash I'm sorry. Like, I don't want to be a burden, but like, you're so awesome and amazing, and I love you. And she was so sweet, and she's like, let's just keep it simple, simple, and like, they want to see like your technique and your form, and we don't have to do anything crazy. So she was just such a light for me in that audition process. William Regal to showing us backstage and walking us through the whole process. And then I remember they only asked a few people to go upstairs and do um like shoot a promo like
Hmm.
in a camera, and there was like three people and it was dark. It looked really sketchy. It sounds really sketchy now that I say it out loud. Like only a few selected. You got to go upstairs by yourself. Like it wasn't like that. It was super chill, very professional. Even though saying it out loud sounds weird. But when they had told me that, it was like, whoa, that's like a good sign. So I was pumped, and I was very like Tony Robbinsing myself, like you got this, like power stance, like confidence, even though I'm like this on the inside. But I knew if I was just genuine and showed my heart and showed my passion and why I'm here, um, oh, it was just such an amazing day. So I had that audition, and it was like solidifying enough, or I got good enough feedback to where it's like, oh, you don't have to go to Vegas, but I was like, I want to fucking go to Vegas, and I want to do it. Like once I got like a taste of that backstage area and just like the excitement and um, people I would watch on TV. It was just like so surreal. So it's like, yeah, I'm gonna go. So I went to the second audition, and then they called me. Man, I think it took like 3 months, 3 or 4 months, and I was bartending at the time. And I remember having my phone on blast plus vibrate so that I felt it and heard it. And I was just waiting for that phone call, like crossing my fingers. So, um, sorry, I forgot the question. I got like wrapped up in what I was
No,
talking
no, just how your developmental deal came about.
Oh, right, right, right. So that's how, so it all kind of started. If you want to count like the commercial and then a couple tryouts, and then, 3 or 4 months later, I got that phone call.
So you get the phone call, and then you were assigned to FCW. What was your first reaction to FCW and the developmental system? What it was before NXT?
Oh, so I was there right as they transitioned.
Hmm.
So they got everyone in the workout area, in the ring area, and I remember that announcement, like, oh, we're just changing the name, and I was like, all right. I didn't really I was like, okay, cool, but yeah, to be part of that transition was amazing. They were like merging and really promoting a lot of their FCW guys. So it was a really exciting time, and I think it was really like kind of experimental too. They were bringing in new coaches. Sarah Del Rey joined us shortly after that as a coach. Um, but yeah, being part of that transition was really cool. But yeah, very, very surreal. Like I feel like I was like, what's it called? Imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
Hardcore, hardcore imposter syndrome. And I remember, so that idea of my subconscious of like WWD, like WWE diva, I remember trying to play that part. And the coaches at the time were like, we want you to be Buggy Nova. Like, we want the mohawk, we want the stars, we want your authentic self. And I was like, cool. And then I started doing my mohawk and stuff. But during those like bikini contests,
Hmm.
like that time, I was like, all right. And I try to like still be myself, or like a little art alternative looking, but I was very, very like meek and like very like walking on eggshells until they kind of gave me that green light to really like lean into my Bucky Nova character, because that's who they saw and that's who they liked. So,
How was it working with the trainers down there? Is there any particular trainer you worked with more?
um, Joey and Smiley, we called him Uncle Norman Smiley, Uncle Smiley, Uncle Norman. Um, and Joey, Bill was back there. Um, Sarah towards the end.
How long before you mentioned that they wanted you to be Buggy? How long before you got to be Buggy after you got
Oh,
signed?
maybe like a month. Yeah, because it was only I was trying to do the math, because I started working in, I think it was June, and then I was in treatment in September. So it had just been a few short months. But I want to say maybe like halfway, like about a month in. I kind of got that relief of like, okay, they want me to be like kind of punk rock, messy, alternative chick.
And did they let you work the live events and the tapings and stuff as Buggy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was Buggy, but it was before the Skylar Moon.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like a play on like the Skylar Moon and Buggy Nova.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, they wanted me to, and no one really told me. I think I asked. I think I asked Coach Bill if it was okay. I put my mohawk up. Hey, is it okay if I do this? And he's like, yeah. Like, hell yeah, girl. And I was like, oh, cool.
So they just
So
let as your time went on, they were letting you be you. Did they have any plans for you, or was it just they were just putting you out there to see what you could do?
yeah, so I think they were just trying to put feelers out there on the potential of like being a tag team partners with Paige is
Hmm.
something that we kind of did right before, like towards the end. Put me and Paige together to see that kind of dynamic and put the two goth girls together, and that was really fun. And then we would have promo class, and that's when we can kind of express ourselves too, and kind of taking our gimmick in a direction or two. So if they saw something that they liked, then they would say, "Okay, let's do that more."
How was it during promo class in front of everybody?
Nerve-wracking. I want to say it was so cool. So like it was all these things, but I remember it was so especially okay. My first day there, CM Punk was there, and I was like 2 seats away from him, and I'm like, this isn't real. This isn't real life. So it was in the beginning a constant battle of trying not to shit myself and throw up everywhere, and then after that had kind of like calmed down. I was trying to lean into like, oh, they just want to see what I can do. It doesn't have to be
Hmm.
good. And after having been there, like not everything was good. Like a lot of it was not a lot of it. It was just having fun and being silly sometimes too. So there were some serious parts, some really like goosebumps moments of like, whoa, that was really good.
Hmm.
And so I felt better with knowing there was a spectrum of like it's just showing like here's what interests me. Does it work? Yes, no, cool. But I do. Speaking of goosebumps, Bray Wyatt had the best promo that I had seen in during one of those classes, and I just feel so thankful to have been part of that class too, that era of when we were all there. But that was one everyone was talking about it afterwards. Like,
Hmm.
dude, that was fucking sick. So there was some golden moments like that during those classes that would happen too.
Is there any particular moments that stand out more than others during your time at NXT?
Um, because I was because I was so sick back then, it was like there was some like darkness and some battles that I was going through in the midst of all this like this dream. Like this is what I
Hmm.
had been working towards. So it was like it was really tough, and I think that's where like kind of my bad memory pops into is because a lot of that like um anxiety and I don't want to say trauma, but almost like a really intense. It was a 24-hour job,
Hmm.
so um, and eyes were on you all the time, and you didn't want to anger anybody because you never knew how it was going to affect you. So um, there were some really magical, funny uh, moments. And I wish I could remember all of them. Like the things that I remember, they're just like little spurts like that. Like the Bray Wyatt during the promo class, or like going out with everybody and
Hmm.
drinking berry beer in Ybor, because we would never get a day off, and when we did, we would go out and party. So those moments were fun. Um, Road trips to the shows. Like I remember, I don't remember much, but I remember seeing a frog like outside of this venue, and I was like, I'd never seen a wild frog. Like I'm from California. I mean, we have frogs out here too, but like kind of like in the swamplands, like small towns out there. It was like
Hmm.
I remember little things like that, or learning. Speaking of AJ Lee, like during the bikini contest, I had done a couple of them, and then I learned that AJ Lee had refused to do those, and I was like, I didn't know that was an option.
Hmm.
You can refuse, but like you were afraid to say no. But I was like, more power to her to like stand her ground. But I was like, man, I was so afraid to go against the grain or do anything like that. So I just did what they told me. I was even afraid to like put my mohawk up, things
Hmm.
like that. I was so full of like anxiety at the same time. But I wish, how long ago was that? 10 plus years later, I wish I could go back and tell myself, like, chill out, be yourself. You're
Hmm.
right where you need to be. Enjoy the moment, be present, and you're good enough.
Hmm.
And you have a purpose here. I wish like my older self could go back and it's like I really didn't have that back then. So I think that's kind of what played a part in my spiral towards the end there. But it was really magical and I'm so thankful. But that's kind of what I blame my bad memory on is just I was really like fighting some demons at the same time.
Hmm. Is that, did everybody feel the same way about they were afraid to do something? Is that like just the pressure of like all eyes
Mhm.
were on it and you just couldn't, like you had to look this way, you had to talk, like you just didn't have, you couldn't be you. It's just a
Yeah.
general over everybody felt that way as well.
I think so. I don't know to the extent of which they felt it, but
Hmm.
they definitely it was like people talked about it, or you would have side conversations with someone like, you know, Vince McMahon doesn't like smokers. Don't let him catch you smelling like smoke. And back then I was smoking, so added to the anxiety, it's like, oh man, don't let anyone
Hmm.
smell you, even like to that. But yeah, you definitely had to, and I say it was a 24-hour job because we were training and going to shows and traveling. But when we weren't doing those things, we were tanning and going to the gym and getting our hair and nails done and shopping for dresses because we had to wear dresses and high heels and we had definitely had to look a certain way. So, and then another, there's a social, political aspect of
Hmm.
that too, of like, of course, you want to be a decent person and just in general, but I think more so because it's such a concentrated amount of talent with like a undertones of competitiveness at the same time. You didn't want to rub anyone the wrong way, or you didn't want to leave a bad impression on anyone. So that, I mean, really gets in. I mean, it got in my head for sure. So there was like an understanding of like you want to be cool with everyone and you want them to be cool with you and you don't want to ruffle any feathers.
Hmm. You've mentioned it a couple of times. If you're not comfortable talking about it, we don't have to. Is this some of these issues? Is that what led to your release?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Unfortunately. So what happened was I had previously been diagnosed with an eating disorder when I was about like 17, 18.
Hmm.
And I started wrestling and really attributed a lot of my recovery to having gotten into wrestling because prior to that, I wanted to be like very, very thin. I was into modeling, so I was like, oh, I wanted to be, a runway model, so I had to look a certain way. And then when I started wrestling, it's like, oh no, I want to be strong. Like I need to be fed and I
Hmm.
need to treat myself like an athlete. Um, so it really helped get me out of that hole back then. And I think with this new environment, all the stresses, I think I was homesick too, coming from California and not knowing anybody out in Florida. Um, plus other things going on, everything was just kind of caught up with me and the stress and the pressure and I think maybe feeling sorry, maybe feeling a little bit lonely too at the same time out there, um, kind of led to my spiral and I couldn't stop on my own. That was the biggest thing, and I knew that if I went into residential treatment is what they wanted me to do after doing an assessment. They're like, you need to be hospitalized, like, and I knew that that was the case. So, um, WWE told me that if I wanted help, there was help there, that they would take care of everything. And um, all I had to do was say yes. But I knew if I said yes, I would lose my job. I knew it because I had just gotten there. Are you kidding me? And then that guilt of like, man, I don't have what it takes, or like I couldn't pull through, or I wasn't strong enough, or whatever. Um, but I knew I couldn't stop on my own. And eating disorders is a vicious disease. And if I know in my case, like if I didn't get help, that external intervention, I could not stop on my own. So I didn't have a choice in that. Like I couldn't do it on my own. So I had to say yes. And I knew if I say yes, I'm going to lose my job. So lose my job or lose my life. I don't know.
Hmm.
So I agreed. And at first, there was some resistance in like, okay, I'm just going to do 30 days, get in, get out, like fix me. I showed up there. And it's so funny kind of working in eating disorders now as a dietitian, looking back at the mindset that I had back then. um, Looking back at the mindset I had back then, it doesn't work that way. Um, Especially kind of depending on how your brain is like hardwired. Um, and it took me back then a couple months to learn that, and I really had to do a surrendering piece for my recovery too. And and I thought, well, if they're gonna let me go anyways, because I had it in my head. No one told me this. It was just I knew it in my head that if I said yes, they would let me go. Well, I might as well get what I can out of this and really really lean into the recovery and take all the suggestions that they told me and do whatever they told me, because I knew I did not want to have another relapse and go through all this again. So when I signed up, I said yes, and I let go of that control piece
Hmm.
of I'm only going to do 30 days and then I'm out of here. Once I got over that, I that place truly, truly saved my life. And um, I had finished residential treatment in December, I believe, and then went back into work sometime in January. And shortly after that, I had gotten the call that I was let go. And then people were like, I don't think that's legal. And I was like, I think they could do whatever they want. Like, that was my impression, because I'm sure
Hmm.
that they have their own lawyers and contracts and stuff and ins and out. And at that time, too, even with people telling me like that's not right or whatever, I was just so full of gratitude
Hmm.
for that opportunity that they gave me. that that I was like, I had told myself that that's why I became a pro wrestler, is that so I could go through all this and come out having that eating disorder experience and that treatment experience. And it helped open up another career path for me afterwards. So that's kind of what helped me sleep at night, especially
Hmm.
back then. It was really a tough pill to swallow, especially watching, the girls I grew up with in FCW, take off. And um, it's really hard, or it was really hard back then, when WrestleMania came around, and, that could have been me or whatever. Like those types of thoughts were very real.
Hmm.
But what really gave me peace and helped me through that time is just like this is just my path. And I'm grateful for everything that WWE did for me. And now I get to help girls in similar situations, similar, like, I can't stop, I need help. So I'm
Hmm.
really grateful for
How has life been after WWE?
that. Life after, it's a trip. So after I had gotten released, I took some time off. Um, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do wrestling anymore. I don't know if like the end of WWE meant like the end of my wrestling experience. So I took some time off, and I think a couple years later, I had gotten back into it on the local indie scene, um, doing shows for AWS, EWF, little things like that. Local shows, not little things. I did local shows like that, and it was really fun. So I had learned that I still enjoyed it. I still loved performing. I was in school at the time. I decided to go back to school. to become a registered dietitian. Um, so doing school and dabbling in wrestling, but not really like wrestling with the purpose of like, oh, I want to make it big or I want to do this or I want to do that. I think I had like peaks of that, like, oh, maybe I want to go back to WWE. And then I was like, no, let me just like chill out. Or like, oh, maybe I want to go back to it. So I kind of rode that wave out a little bit. Of course, when you're like surrounded or you're going to wrestling shows, it's really hard not to like get caught up in it. And when I really threw my whole life into wrestling when I first started. So now, I think I went back at like 25, 26, a little bit older, having a new perspective, doing school again, and trying to keep my eyes on the prize of like, oh, I want to be a registered dietitian, and throw my whole life into doing that. That's when I decided, I'm done with wrestling and decided to kind of retire. If anyone really like retires from wrestling, which I don't know if anyone really does, because once the bug bites you, it's really hard to go back. But um, in 2020, I had my last show. So I had decided to kind of retire that year, but then COVID hit and kind of retired everybody for that
Hmm.
year. Um, but really grateful to my friend Alan. He since passed away, rest in peace. Quintessential Pro Wrestling. He put on this Thank You Buggy show, and it was, I couldn't have imagined um, a, a more. I'm just so grateful to have been part of that, and for him to consider putting that show on. And it was the funnest match. It was me and Christina Von Eerie versus Johnny Goodtime and Johnny Yuma, the Rock Ness Monsters. Um, and it was just so much fun, and everyone there that was part of it, the crowd too, all the love from the crowd. I was just so that I'm telling that's the way to go out. That's the way. That's I'm
Hmm.
totally okay with that being my last show because it was just full of love and all my friends and people that I had grown up with in wrestling too. So um, I don't know if I could top that. So I don't know if I have any plans on going back to wrestling. I'm super happy with that being my last time.
Well, it's nice to see that you're helping other people now. That's a good thing.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. I'm working in Carlsbad in at a facility for eating disorders. I also have my private practice where I take on clients who struggle with disordered eating or have any like questions or need some extra guidance as far as like nutrition wise. So I'm very happy like kind of doing my own thing and living the best that I can in that world and being of service um, and maybe inspiring them to be dietitians too, the way that I was inspired. The possibilities are endless. So
Where can they reach out to you at if they need help?
you can reach out to me on Instagram. My Instagram, I still have my wrestling page. So my wrestling Instagram is Buggy Nova. And then I have my nutrition page, which is um, nutrition. No, it's Natalie with nutrition. I had to think about that. And I put it backwards on purpose. I was like, oh, nutrition with Natalie sounds better. But I would always answer the phone in my dietetic internship with hi, Natalie with nutrition because everyone would say their first name with nutrition, so like nutrition services or whatever. So it's Natalie with nutrition on Instagram.
So, taking clients on right now?
I am. Yeah, you guys hit me up. I'm really good. I'm really good now. I know my stuff, I promise. People are always like trip out when they don't know about my wrestling background. And even myself with the imposter syndrome, dude, like the imposter syndrome is so real. It's um like do I am I really, but it's like it's all in your head, like just like
Hmm.
be present. I'm trying to like channel that like me 10, 15 years from now, like no, it's like you're good, like you're right where you need to be, like kind of doing that to myself now,
Hmm.
like the way that I wanted, that I wish I could, 10 years earlier. um but yeah, I am taking new clients, helping them discover their own journey with nutrition and meeting their goals and anything that they struggle with, because I do understand sometimes it's not about the food, it's about something deeper.
Hmm.
Um, same thing with body image. People struggle with body image or food or weighing or um, their whole relationship with food, or maybe you can't stop thinking about food or you can't stop doing a certain behavior. I'm really into figuring that out with the individual. So hit me up. Look in the camera. Do a little hit me up. I am taking people, but if you just want to chat too, I love chatting with anyone who is might be struggling. You are not alone, so I like to throw that reminder out there too.
Well, if you had any advice to give to anybody getting into professional wrestling, what would it be?
Do it, do it now. Um, any advice? Yeah, man. I think if you uh, I was talking to someone actually recently who wanted to get into pro wrestling, and it's like, don't wait.
Mhm.
Don't wait. Just do it. The world doesn't stop. No matter what it is you want to do, if there's something that's like tugging on your heartstrings that is calling you, but maybe you have imposter
Mhm.
syndrome as well, don't listen to that voice. Just be present and do it, and the world doesn't stop, and it's not going to wait for you. So just do it bad. Don't be afraid to fail. Like, we're all bad,
Mhm.
until you just keep doing it. So I heard something that was like, fail faster. Like, if you're afraid of failing, like, just fail faster. Like,
Mhm.
just do the thing. So if you want to get into pro wrestling, find a school, uh, DM anybody. That's how I get a lot of connections too. Is I just like DM people nowadays, like with networking. If you have any questions, if they don't reply, whatever. But I think as a community, I like to think that we're always like helping that next generation, and it excites me to see like new people come in and be excited about pro wrestling and be excited about something that they love and that they're passionate about. So just ask around, don't be afraid. The worst that could happen is you're bad a little bit, like, but who cares because
Mhm.
everybody is. So just do it. What I would
Abs-
say.
Absolutely. I just want to say thank you for taking a little time out today to talk about your career. Thank you
Mm,
for what you've done for professional wrestling, and thank you for what you're doing now to help people. It's really
no,
inspiring. You're doing a
thank
lot of good things.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, and thank you for providing this platform for me to talk about it.
Absolutely. If there's ever anything that I can do, please feel free to reach out.
Hell yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank